Imagine sitting out at the lake, sitting there in your nice chair, having a beer, having a drink, with your rod in the lake, right? Actively fishing on the shoreline, casting, you're not getting nothing. It's your first time. What's going wrong? I'm going to help you become a better bass fisherman today. These simple tips and tricks, you will catch bass. There's nothing like that feeling of getting that nibble on your line. If you felt it, you know. It comes right down here, and it's just one of the most joyful things that you could ever imagine. If you've ever thought about fishing, you've probably heard of bass. It's a very common fish, and it's one of the most actively fished in Northern America. There's smallmouth bass and largemouth bass. I personally have been fishing since I was 3, but I really started to remember when I was fishing around when I was 5. I really got into bass fishing when I was 18. I'm now almost 22. When I first got into bass fishing, I was fishing almost every single day. I watched countless hours of videos on how to fish, where to fish, any tips I could so I could become a better fisherman for myself. A couple of things I'm going to talk about to help you become a better bass fisherman and get and catch more bass is first, where and what time of year you want to catch these bass. Is it going to be in the summer, spring, fall, that kind of time of the year? The next is going to be the location. Where are these bass going to be? In the lake, the stream, the river, the pond, that kind of thing. Lastly, but almost more importantly than the rest, is what bait to use. Okay. The first place is what time of year. The best time, no matter what time of the year, is either early morning or late afternoon. I preferably like to fish late afternoon. You get a nice beautiful sunset, and it's a great time to catch bass because the sun's down, the fish are coming up to the top of the water. Eric Matchek says the best time to catch the biggest fish is early spring, late spring, and that's spawning season for bass. That's when you're going to have pregnant bass who are getting ready to have babies, and that's where you're going to catch your big bass. My personal best was early spring, and it was a 5-pound bass. That was out of Sand Hollow, Utah. Okay. Also, one of my more favorite times to catch multiple bass, not just big bass, is in the summer. These bass like to come up when the water's warm. They get their heat from the water around them. So in the summer, they're going to be more active. When they're more active, they're more likely to bite and go after what you're throwing out there. One of the slower times to catch bass, however, is going to be in the fall and the winter, and that's just because they're going to be slower. Now, you can still catch bass. However, you have to change what kind of bait, and we'll talk about that later, that you're throwing. You have to go to how active they are. If the fish are active in the summer, you're going to want to be really actively fishing. If they're slow in the winter, you're going to want to be pretty slow, not doing too much so the bass don't have to do a lot of work and burn a lot of energy because they're low on food. Next, we're going to talk about locations in the lakes, rivers, ponds, depending where you're fishing for bass. A pro bass fisherman, yes, that is a real thing. You can get paid to be a pro bass fisherman. Thousands and thousands of dollars. It's a real job. Pro bass fisherman Greg Hackney loves wood. He said if you can find wood, especially decaying wood, you know that feel of wood in the water when it's just kind of ripping off and just kind of yucky, it looks gross, that will bring bait fish. Bass love little bait fish because a bass is about this big on average, okay? And little bait fish is what they usually eat, which is just little, minnows and things, or little crawfish. Little bait fish are attracted to the wood because of what it's giving off in the water. So if you see a lot of bait fish, most likely there's going to be a couple big bass nearby. Also, a favorite for mine to fish is docks. Preferably single docks, not a bunch of docks in a row like a marina, because then they have more places to hide. Bass are usually but they're hang out underneath the dock because it gives them shade from the sun. Bass do not have eyelids, so they need protection from the sun, not only for their eyes, but for their skin as well, their scales. If they have too much sun, it's really harmful for their scales. They actually will start coming off, which doesn't help them in the water. One other place would be, another big place would be weeds. And a big spot that a lot of fishermen like to use is lily pads. And that's because of frogs and the natural protection from the sun as well. They can go through, the lily pads are connected underneath, and they can go through there and have that protection from the sun, as well as bait fish will go there as well. Bass are also known to go after frogs. Whole frogs, they'll eat them in one gulp. One other spot that's a little bit less used, but can still work depending on the lake or pond or river that you're using, is rocks. And it's not just going to be one gigantic boulder that they're going to be around most likely. They're going to be in a cluster of rocks, because that's where crawfish will live. That's where dead fish will get stuck in the water currents and decay, and they're just nibble off of that. And the nutrients will get stuck in the rocks, and they'll just stay around there. So to prioritize, give yourself that best chance to catch a bass, you're going to want to go to those hot spots. I'm not saying you can't catch them everywhere, but if you want to go to hot spots and give yourself the best chance, those are some of the best spots in a lake, pond, river again. Lastly is what bait. And like I said before, this is probably the most important spot that you're going to use. I have a tackle box full of everything, and you're not going to use everything every single time. Some days you're going to use a little worm about this big, and it's black, and it looks like nothing. It looks like licorice. Okay, and you throw it out there, and for whatever reason, they love it. The way it bounces off the rocks, you put a little weight at the bottom, and the worm's up top, and when you bounce it, it goes like this on the bottom, which looks like a little crawfish as you're reeling it in. Okay, next you're gonna have crankbaits, spinner baits, and these are ones that look like little fish that are shiny and colorful, and they're underwater and they shake. When they go through the water, they shake with a little bit of vibration, and the bass will pick up on that and they attack it, because bass are very much an aggressive fish. Okay. Another one that I really like to use, but don't catch a lot of fish on, is topwater. Okay, that's gonna be like your fake frogs, fake lizards, or just a little whopper plopper, it's called, and it literally skips on the water, making a plopping sound. And the bass will come from underneath, attacking where they think that little fish, they think it's a fish or frog, is vulnerable, and literally will come up and take it. And usually a bass that's going to take that is going to be your big ones. You're not going to have a small little bass come and take that, just because they're not ready for it. And that's where you can get some big bites, and that's where you're really going to get that feeling in your stomach, like, wow, this fish just came and literally jumped out of the water to catch, this little piece of plastic I threw out there. One more importantly thing, not just the bait you're using, but what kind of pole are you using? A lot of people, beginners especially, should use a spinning rod. Okay, that's just your simple, you flick it over, you cast it out, you flick it back over, and you reel it in. I like to use a medium to medium heavy. And you can also use a bait casting rod. This is going to be for your heavier baits, like a frog or something like that, that's heavy. You're going to use a heavier line, but that's going to be for your bigger fish. You're going to be pulling them out deep. They're going to be a heavier fish, so you're going to have to use a heavier line in that rod as well. All of this is coming from the National Wildlife Association. They go out there, they catch bass, and they're just out there giving you the best ways to catch fish, because they want you to catch fish. That's why they're out there stocking them for you. To conclude, catching bass it's very difficult if you don't know what you're doing. If you have the right tips, the right tricks, the right idea, the right location, and the right time of the year, there's no reason you should not be getting that feeling in your stomach. And like I said before, it's a feeling that no one can compare to if you haven't had it. It's just something different, and it's something that you want to strive for, and it will get you addicted to bass fishing. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. I hope you go out there and catch some bass.